Hi guys, this is Watching It Movies Reviews with Rachel,
And my name is Tristan.
and today we are going to be reviewing Tusk by Kevin Smith. It is about a US podcaster who ventures into the Canadian wilderness to interview an old man who has an extraordinary past, and the American learns the man has a dark secret involving a walrus. Overall, a very confusing movie. Tristan?
Yeah. Yeah, the movie is pretty confusing in terms of the plot. It's kind of just all over the place. Some people prefer plots in movies like that, where the plot is just kind of crazy and chaotic. But it's not even that chaotic. It's just kind of like all over the place. Some of it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, so we're going to be going through categories and then we're going to rate it out of 10. So the first category is the visual, the color palettes, the shots, the frames. I actually personally liked the way they used the natural colors around them. When he's not at the old man's house before all the serial killer stuff happens, it's very bright outside, very happy, more like when they go inside, it's darker, it has more sea colors and a lot of browns. So you can visually see a contrast in where they are.
Most horror movies typically like to stick to a pale, kind of sickly green, white color palette to simplify. There's like a lot of like sickness and discomfort where they are. So if you look at movies like Saw, for instance, it's a really good movie to look at for the color palette because if they're stuck in the bathroom, it's all just white. So it's very grisly to look at, and it's very like sickening and discomforting.
It was an experience. I felt kind of uncomfortable watching it, not because of necessarily what I saw, but how they delivered it, I would say. The actors were trying very hard to make it serious for a not serious movie.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. I feel like the performances were pretty good in terms of the actors. It wasn't terrible. It could have been a lot worse, but they chose to make it just really unserious, the writers did. And I think it kind of takes away from the acting a lot. So it's pretty disappointing to see kind of that circle around the movie.
So now we're going to move on to characters. So I said, despite how vulgar the main character was, it was pretty realistic and believable. The only character I had major issues with was the serial killer, Howard. His story was confusing. He goes on this huge monologue about how he met certain famous people, but you can't even tell if it's true or not. And honestly, it just took away from the film. The girlfriend and the best friend, Allison and Ted, they were pretty realistic, and they had a pretty good performance. Johnny Depp was in it, actually, and his character was kind of a mix of the comic relief and the exposition about the old man, and it was kind of odd and just kind of random. It was just out there. I felt like he was just a side character to be used as like a stepping stool for the other characters, and it was kind of not so great.
I felt like Johnny Depp was kind of just out of the place because it felt like most of the actors were pretty amateur, and Johnny Depp's like he's a pretty famous actor, so it just kind of felt out of place, and I don't know, his performance was still kind of lackluster, even though he was pretty, popular. It just still kind of felt out of place, so the acting, it's decent at best, but just doesn't match with what the plot aligns with.
So it's labeled as a horror comedy. Whether or not it matches that is up to debate. I would say no. Not once did I laugh, and the few times I did was a nervous laugh because of how graphic it was and the quote-unquote serious scenes. And it didn't make me scared easy, and it didn't make me scared, which is pretty easy to do. I'm kind of a wuss. And it definitely just was not there. Nothing seemed funny to me. The very beginning, it's supposed to be the funny scenes before it leads up to the intense scenes. And it was nothing but dark humor, and it was very unsettling. Like, they made a Nazi joke. I mean, it was just all over the place. It just was not fun to watch.
Yeah, the main podcast is like a Nazi joke. So I really don't have much to say about the genre itself and how the movie tries to align with it, the horror comedy. The only thing I was horrified about was the fact that when I tried to pull up the time to see how much time the movie had left, there was like an hour left. So I was pretty horrified about that. Not exactly with the plot. it just revolves. It tries to revolve around horror and comedy, but it's so miserably bad. The horror is. It just feels like it's more comedy than horror. And I think the producers are very self-aware with how bad it was. So yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely awful. And I think they couldn't take themselves seriously with what they wrote.
So now we're gonna move on to plot. The plot had issues, to say it nicely. It was confusing, random, in a whirlwind of emotions. It was a very, very slow start, and when it does, it leaves you horrifically confused. The only characters I could actually see, like, being in the real world was the girlfriend and the best friend, and even at the end, they kind of lose that title when they go to him when he's a walrus, and she has that whole weird love scene, like she loves him but she doesn't, and he's a walrus, and she slept with his best friend. It's just all over the place, and I felt like that wasn't really, it doesn't align with horror, maybe comedy, the cheating part, but it just was unsettling to watch this girl like a walrus, and the serial killer who, who turned him into a walrus and paralyzed him, and it was just uncomfortable all the way around. It didn't make any sense. And then Johnny Depp was just randomly there as tracking this dude, apparently.
Yeah, it was just, yeah, that's one of the things that I agree with. Story-wise, it was just the strangest and dumbest thing I've ever seen in a horror movie. The only reason why anybody should just see this movie is because just how unbearably bad it is. Because you would be able to get a laugh out of it, not just because it's a bad movie, but because the sort of jokes that they have in there, if you're into satirical humor, then you might find some sort of level of enjoyment in the movie itself. But most of it's just kind of just garbage humor that everybody's heard of before. Again, it's a 2014 film, so I don't expect anybody to really get into the jokes, because it's jokes that everybody's heard of before. So, yeah, that's that. And it's because also it's probably one of the cringiest things you'll ever see. Some of the fight scenes at the end are absolutely awful.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah,
the only credit you can really give this movie is the fact that it used no CGI.
I do agree with that. Yeah, the costumes.
It used one scene with CGI, and it was done pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. There was one scene where the kid cuts off his leg or something. They call him Kill Bill Kid.
Oh,
the CGI for that was awful. So that's pretty much the only CGI in the movie. So
that
I'm not
in the flashback scene with the walrus.
Yeah, exactly.
That one was done pretty well, though. I mean, considering the budget and, the writers, pretty decent. The kid, though, not so great. So, the conclusion is, I feel like not only is it a bad movie, but it's a rite of passage. Everyone needs to watch it because it's stupid. Johnny Depp's in it. And it's a movie that everybody will hate if you have a good music taste. Good movie taste.
Good movie taste, yeah.
Well, so the music's pretty bad in there, too.
Oh, yeah. The soundtrack, it's a pun on the movie itself. So if you ever, if you get to the end somehow, miraculously, like we did, you'll find out that the soundtrack is actually the title of the song. So if you want to look it up, it's the most stupidest thing ever. So just be aware of that. The movie's pretty cringe in general. It's a pretty bad movie, but it's funny in some parts. It's funny because of how bad it is, and because of those reasons, it's somewhat enjoyable. So unlike most movies nowadays, it's kind of just a breath of fresh air just to see how bad it is.
Yeah.
Which is ironic. So yeah, in my personal opinion, I would give this movie a 5 out of 10. Just mediocre all across the board. But at least it's somewhat funny.
I gave it a 4.
Yeah. So
I thought it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. This is our first video. We will probably post weekly. Our schedule is susceptible to change because we have a lot going on in our lives right now. And obviously you do too. So we'll attempt to adjust our schedule to fit better in the lives of others right now because of the whole quarantine thing going on. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments description below. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing as we post obviously weekly, like I just said. And we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.